To amend the title of the bill.
Question is on adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Further bills.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 268 relating to PEIA. Third reading of the bill.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to amend the bill on third read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Does the clerk have an amendment?
Yes, sir. Senator Takubo moved to amend the bill on page 18, section 5.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendments in lieu of having them read and that the amendments be considered as one.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendments are mostly technical in origin and basically reiterates the smoothing process that's in place. The first part of the amendment is to allow the Public Employees Insurance Agency, PEIA, to retain revenues in the event that the revenues exceed expenses and then use those revenues to offset future premium expenses. That does not offset the 80-20, but simply if for some reason there's a really, really bad year, you don't see significant premium spikes on employees of the state. The second part of the amendment strikes the word a nationally accredited network and replaces these words with networks. Currently, PEIA may have contracts with multiple networks around the state for different reasons. Some may be available more in the northern parts of our border, some in the southern parts, etc. We had made it one word, so that would have meant that only one network that had to be cleaned up. And the last part of the amendment strikes all of the subdivision 2 and replaces it with a new subdivision. The reason for that is clarity. The previous language in the bill made the first half of the subdivision applicable to voluntary employees, which made a conflict, and that was cleaned up. Happy to take questions. Otherwise, I urge adoption of the amendments.
Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the senior senator from the 17th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Question now is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of the bill is to provide stability for the PEIA. The first portion of the bill addresses definitions. This section includes definitions that existed in various sections throughout the article and were incorporated into a central place to make it easier to understand the article. Technical changes are made throughout the bill, such as deleting outdated deadlines and inapplicable provisions. The bill requires all members of the PEIA Finance Board to have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the plan assets for the benefit of plan participants. The bill requires that July 1, 2023, and every year thereafter, all board members shall complete fiduciary training and timely complete any conflict of interest forms required to serve as a PEIA fiduciary. The bill provides that all financial plans shall establish that the minimum level of reimbursement of at least 110% of Medicare amount for all providers, provided that the plan shall reimburse a West Virginia hospital that provides inpatient medical care to a beneficiary covered by the state and non-state plans at a minimum rate of 110% of the Medicare diagnosis-related rate for the admission, or the Medicare per diem per day rate applicable to a critical access hospital as appropriate, provided, however, that the rates established do not apply to any Medicare program, retiree health plan. We can't conflict with CMS codes. The bill provides that the PEIA Finance Board shall conduct at least 2 public hearings in each congressional district to receive public comments on a proposed financial plan. With respect to plan formulation, the bill provides that once the governor provides an estimate of total revenues to the PEIA Finance Board and has estimated the revenues available for each fiscal year of the plans based upon the percentage of growth in the general revenue funds, the Director and the PEIA Finance Board may only use revenue estimates from the governor as necessary to maintain an actuarially recommended reserve fund and to maintain premium cost-sharing percentages as required in the article. The bill provides that the Director and the PEIA Finance Board may not incorporate revenue sources into the Finance Board plan beyond the premium cost-sharing percentages as required in this article. The bill provides that the Director shall provide the number of covered lives in the current fiscal year and a 5-year analysis of the cost for covering paid claims to the West Virginia Finance Board no later than October 15th for the preceding year. The bill provides that West Virginia PEIA Finance Board shall submit its final approval financial plan after obtaining the necessary actuary opinion, which opinion shall include, but not limited to, the aggregate premium cost-sharing percentages between the employers and employees, including amounts of any subsidization of retired employee benefits at a level of 80% for the employer and 20% for the employees. In the event the revenues in a given year exceed the expenses, the amount of revenues in excess of the expenses shall be retained by the Public Employee Insurance Agency to offset future premium increase surges. Under the section addressing mandated benefits, the bill removes a cap placed on the annual maximum benefit for applied behavioral analysis. The bill removes a report that is required to be filed with the Joint Committee on Government and Finance. In the same section, the bill rearranges mandated benefits placed in other sections of the bill. These benefits included the section that relate to coverage for vaccinations, contraceptives, and a group life insurance. The group life insurance language was amended to reflect that the group life and accidental death insurance is in the amount of $10,000 for every employee. PEIA still allows you to get additional plans to that. The bill requires PEIA to maintain at a minimum of 20% cost share for in-state benefits when applicable and a minimum of 30% cost share for out-of-state benefits when applicable. The bill provides that health programs may be offered in addition to existing language that provides PEIA may have wellness programs. The language additionally states that PEIA may explore, review, evaluate, and offer a variety of programming and resources to meet the needs of its members. These programs are voluntary and for the participants and separate from any medical benefit. Language in the contract section of the bill was deleted, and much of these services were moved to the mandated benefits portion of the bill. The bill provides PEA shall use networks to provide care to its members out of state. The bill provides that an employee spouse that has health insurance available through another employer not defined in 5-16-2 of the code, then the employer may not cover any portion of the premiums for the employee's spouse coverage unless the employee adds his or her spouse to his or her coverage by paying the cost of the actuarial value of the plan, provided that this does not apply to spouses of retired employees or voluntary employees as defined in 5-16-22 of the code. The bill requires PEIA to return to a level of 80% for the employer and 20% for employees for fiscal year 2024. The bill requires PEIA to conduct an independent actuarial study of the financial solvency of the plan, including but not limited to a consideration of alternatives to bring long-term financial stability to the plan. Options regarding continued non-state employee participation in the plan, collapsing salary levels, and any other cost-saving measures. The bill requires PEIA to seek input from the public employees, the retirees, the providers, and other interested parties on solutions to evaluate in the study. The study shall begin on July 1, 2023. A report shall be presented to the Joint Committee for Government and Finance on July 1, 2024. The bill provides that amendments made to the article are to be incorporated to the plan beginning in the year 2024. Be happy to take questions. Otherwise, I urge adoption.
Question is on passage of bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Majority Leader yield to some
Will the
questions?
Majority Leader yield?
Yes.
Majority Leader yields.
Thank you, Senator. First question I have is, the bill states that members of the board shall have a fiduciary responsibility to protect plan assets. So what's new about that? Don't they already have a fiduciary duty to the participants?
So they do have that. We just put in there that they have the training requirement to make sure that they are actuarially sound and trained in that field.
Those are the members of the board, right?
Correct.
Okay, let me ask you this. How much do you think, based on your experience, I haven't really been on a committee that looked at this bill, so I need to be enlightened just a bit. How much do you think this will cost or save the state in a year, like say next year?
My understanding, and I can get corrected if I'm wrong, but with these changes in place, it should be in the neighborhood in just the next 4 years. First year would be $76 million in savings alone, compared to what the initial plan by the governor's estimate, and by year 2027, it would be in the neighborhood of $549,905,000 in savings in 4 years.
So is that the aggregate number of the 500 and some million that's going to propose to be saved in over 5 years?
That's correct.
I noticed the fiscal note mentions the possibility of receipt of $74 million in non-premium revenue. Is that coming from the rainy day funds, or where's that money supposed to come from?
That was removed and has been taken out of the bill.
Thank you. What about employer costs? I'm assuming the governor will propose another flat budget. Do the state agencies such as DHHR, corrections, do they have the ability with a flat budget to absorb those costs?
So the money in the original budget bill has been transferred to those agencies so that they could pick up the difference in the bill.
Well, what about after July 1st? What are we going to do with that? Where's that money? Are they going to be able to carry that forward with a flat budget? What is the projection on that?
The plan is in the 80-20 plan that any additional budget in the down years would all be budgeted into that to take care of those premium changes.
From where?
Yeah, this would all be money that would already be sent from general revenue to that. And so what that also does is brings down the full 20% from the employee, but then also pulls in the special revenue account so that there's a 32% federal match that's not coming off the backs of the taxpayers from the general revenue fund.
So my last question has to do with reimbursement. We talked about that, or I heard you discussing the reimbursement. And earlier today, you may have heard me make some comments about Senate Bill 726, which is now on the judiciary agenda for Monday afternoon or Monday at some point. And just for the lay people, I'm going to ask the question with a little bit of a predicate. So if somebody gets injured in a car accident and they have PEIA as their insurance carrier, what I understand happens, at least in my experience, is PEIA pays that bill for the participant, and then at some point, a lawyer, if it's an injury case where the member, the PEIA member, is not at fault, a lawyer would take that case and go get compensation from that drunk driver or impaired driver or at-fault driver. And then something called reimbursement or subrogation would kick in, and that money would be paid back to PEIA, right? Do you understand that under Senate Bill 726, we're not going to have reimbursement or subrogation? Now, my numbers indicate that $1.85 million a year will be lost to PEIA for every year, or in my numbers, $5.5 million will be lost to PEIA in 36 months if Senate Bill 726 passes, because we will no longer have that money kicked back to PEIA. Has that been factored into has that been discussed at all in your preparation of the bill? Could we absorb that loss?
In the preparation of the bill, that bill was not discussed. There is concern that that oftentimes when an accident or something happens, it is my understanding that it is the role of the insurance agency to provide remuneration for those fees. And oftentimes when a trauma patient comes in or something like that, oftentimes the patient is admitted and maybe it's PIA or Medicare or something like that is taken in. Those fees are covered, when in reality they probably should have been covered at a higher commercial rate by the insurance company. So if in your my reading of that particular bill, then that may be an issue. However, I'm not so sure it's germane to this particular bill as we stand now.
Well, I guess let me ask it a different way. Is there $5.5 million over 36 months of wiggle room in this bill if PEI is not going to be reimbursed under the provisions of the Senate Bill 526? I mean, how much loose change is there rolling around this proposal? Could it absorb the 5.5, based on my number, 5.5 million the PEI will lose if we pass that bill? How tight is this going to be, is what my question is, Senator.
State your point.
President, I'm not certain that the questions are germane to the bill that's before us. If the distinguished minority leader would like to argue the provisions of Senate Bill 576, I think he would have the opportunity to do so in the Judiciary Committee on Monday.
Your point is sustained.
Whatever it might be.
Speak to the bill.
Speak to the bill, Senator from Cabell.
And appreciate the Senator from Brook there keeping me on track. I just have so many questions, and I guess I'm a couple days short asking, that one I just raised. I couldn't really raise that until next week, but I'm just, for the retirees and all those folks out there that are counting on us, I'm going to have to speak against this bill, because I think there are just too many variables, too many assumptions in place that may or may not come to pass. And at the end of the day, I'm afraid our retirees are going to get left holding the bag.
Is there further discussion? Senior Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to speak in favor of the bill. I've been here for a number of years, and the Senator from Pleasance and I voted on the first plan to try to move us to 80-20 in 1995 and 1996. We revisited it again in 2001, and subsequently we've also revisited a couple other times. But this is an important bill to be done, in my estimation, because you're saving PEIA. You're not looking at it from a standpoint that you're offering burden to someone. When 1995 and 96, when we looked at PEIA with the select committee, at that time, the state of West Virginia was paying 96% of the people's premiums or of the plan. Only 4% was paid by the people in the plan of PEIA. So we embarked on a select committee and actually set up a lot of parameters you're looking now. I think that what you're finding here is another review of this that is an incremental step. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot of things. If anybody would have predicted in 1984, when the Senate gave free health care to people and free retirement health care for people, that the medical inflation rate would have been what it has been since 1984, they would have never have done that. But I believe this is a responsible way to do it. And with responsibility, there's pain on some sides of everything. But I think that this is one that is a next incremental step and one that is needed to save the plan, because you can know what's going on. If higher ed pulls out of the PEIA, you're not going to have PEIA as you know it. The way that we're the only, PEIA is one of the only, and the only one I know of, that has ever based your premiums based upon salary, the salary of what someone makes. And the steps that the Senate is taking right now with this, and then with the salary increases that are coming back, are taking care of the middle range and the lower range very well in that respect. So I think that I'm standing up to say that this is a responsible thing to do. This is something that I feel very strongly on, having been parts of PEIA through now this being my 31st year in the Senate, and I'd urge the adoption of the bill.
Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Majority Leader yield to a few questions, please?
Majority Leader yield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Leader. Look, I'm going to first admit that this is way outside of my bailiwick. So I've been approached by several people with questions. I'm going to try to do my best to ask them and see if we can get some answers, because they just felt like they didn't have enough time through the committee process to testify and get their questions out to be answered. So first of all, Mr. Leader, about how many participants in this plan? It's my understanding 230-some thousand. Does that sound about right?
That's correct.
And I know that we don't have to do this, but I want to ask you, has the governor's office been involved in any of these negotiations for the PEIA?
They have.
They have? And I'm concerned about retirees, because, you know, my friend talked about the salary increase for working members, but I'm concerned about the retirees. And on page 44, it says the plan may provide for retired employees. How am I supposed to interpret that? Should retirees be concerned with that language?
No, it's my understanding the retirees were not included in the plan, actually. They were no, let me clarify with council, but.
What line?
Yeah, can you tell me again what line you're referring to specifically?
Well, I have it, and I don't know if this changed. It was page 44. I'd have to go back. The new language says a plan may provide for retired employees. And I know retired employees have always been in the plan. I'm just concerned about how this should be interpreted, because it doesn't say they shall be. It just says they may be. 44.
That was just technical cleanup. There was the retirees, because Medicare sets the number. You can't treat any Medicare plan different than another Medicare plan, so they were not included in the changes in this bill.
So you're telling me retirees don't have a need to be concerned? Is that what I'm hearing you say, Mr. Leader?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And is there a minimum? We're talking about spousal coverage if they have to get insurance from wherever they work. Is there a minimum plan coverage before that kicks in? I mean, could it be a very, very substandard plan that's available to them that would force them into that plan? Is there any level of coverage, any basic level of coverage for that?
So there's federal plans that sets the standard for substandard plans, and so that would be the floor, whatever the federal plan is. So it would have to meet a certain criteria to be considered a plan.
Okay, I didn't realize that. So, and how much will it cost plan participants to cover a spouse under this bill?
So it depends. If the scenarios are that if a employee of the state spouse does not have insurance or has a job that doesn't offer insurance, they continue to be on the plan as is, and so the amount of that spousal coverage will go into the family as it's always been. If, however, the spouse of a state employee does have insurance, they have to go on that insurance. If they choose to stay on that, they'll have to pay the actuarial amount to stay on the plan, much like the actuarial amount is established for non-state plans.
Okay. What about the premium increases for each salary tier? I understand it can be 14% to 26%. Is that correct? And how is that number determined, I guess, is my question.
So what was trying to be calculated into the plan is to account for worst case scenarios. So if you were higher salaried individual with the more expensive plan with family coverage, with the expectation that you jumped a tier, there is up to about a 24% increase, which is why this has been coupled with a $2,300 pay increase to try to buffer that huge jump in your premium.
So that premium would be effective immediately. It wouldn't be stepped in gradually. Premium increase.
That's correct.
Okay. The actuarial study on page 56 seems to be a map to force the finance board to make other drastic changes in the plan. And I guess why are the options regarding continued non-state employee participation in the plan and collapsing the salary levels mentioned specifically? Because that concerns me that if the salary levels are collapsed, that the lower income folks are going to be paying a lot more in premiums.
Those were specific questions that repeatedly come up in both chambers, and so those were given as examples as to how you may, that the study should look at, how do you keep PEIA viable for the long term for employees. Oftentimes people talk about privatizing PEIA. PEIA is privatized. You can't get cheaper than doing your own insurance. The question really becomes then, can you do it more efficiently and better cost savings while providing maybe even better benefits, and that was the intent of trying to create a plan.
Okay, now just a couple more, and I apologize, Mr. Leader, but there's about, from my understanding, about 31,000 non-state employees in the plan. Is that an accurate number? Approximately accurate number, I guess.
That's my understanding approximately. I can't give you an exact number.
Okay. What would be the out-of-pocket increases for those folks?
It would depend upon the local decision. So if those are employees of a municipality already, those municipalities decide what percentage their employees pay. They're given an actuarial figure, and so everyone is different. So it would just really depend upon the employer.
Okay. And someone handed me a shopper's guide that I didn't even know existed for PEIA plan participants. And they explained to me that according to the guide and under PEIA Plan A, an employee making $45,000 a year with the family plan, if the premium increases 26% along with spousal coverage, the total will come to approximately $2,672 and change, which would exceed the pay raise bill by about $300. Is that an accurate statement? And I'm asking because I don't know the answer to that.
Can you give me the amount again in your scenario?
The employee makes $45,000 a year with a family plan, Plan A, PEIA, PBB, Plan A. And the employee makes $45,000, and I'm told if there is a 26% increase along with spousal coverage, their total increase would be over $2,600, which increases the pay raise. And I just want to know if that's a fairly accurate number.
If they go up in bracket to the next level, that would be $1,600.
Yeah, that's incorrect. So if an employee goes up to $45,000 and it doesn't jump them to the next plan, the yearly increase would be $861.44. If they're at the $45,000 that does jump them to the next salary bracket plan, for example, the yearly increase would be $1,000. I don't have my glasses there, but it'd be roughly $1,221.44, which would yield a net pay increase after the premium was covered of $1,078.56 as an actual pay
Due
increase.
to the pay raise, yeah, but we got to pay taxes on that pay raise too. So I mean that number is going to come down, but that's fine. I appreciate the answers because again, these are things that I've never been on PEIA, so I've never had the experience. But thank you so much for yielding to me, and I'd like to speak to the bill, Mr. President.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Certainly, I'm going to rise in opposition to this bill. I don't know how much input was put in here, but this morning when I looked at my local newspaper, they have this section. It's called Cheers and Jeers. And one of the jeers in today's paper was, "Jeers to the West Virginia legislature for again offering a piece of duct tape to PEIA, the state retirement system that fails to address long-term solvency for the system. Again, like we've stated before, the financial well-being of thousands of families are at stake if PEIA is not made solvent. PEIA should be lawmakers' top priority, and I'm not sure that it was a top priority, and I'm not sure we used enough political will to try to protect the participants." And Mr. Leader, Mr. President, I asked early on about the governor's participation for a reason, because I just did a quick Google search, and I know I'd heard the governor talk about PEIA throughout his career here. And on October 24th of 2021, Metro News article, "Justice says no to PEIA premium increases on his watch." No premium increases on his watch. The governor specifically said to us that absolutely those premiums were not going to go up, period, Justice said. I guess you never say never, but I told them, PEIA officials, point blank, the PEIA premiums would not go up on my watch, period, Justice said. And then a bulletin came out by the Public PEIA Insurance Agency, and this was in May of 2022, and it says, following a directive by Governor Jim Justice, who has vowed not to increase Public Employees Insurance Agency state fund premiums during his term, the PEIA will raise its salary tiers by $2,700. This change is the result of across-the-board pay raises slated for state employees at the start of the new fiscal year following passage of the budget during the 2022 session. The increase to salary tiers will prevent policyholders from moving into a new tier as a result of the pay raise. So, Mr. Governor, I hope you're listening, and I hope you still have the same position that you've stated publicly so many times throughout your administration, and hope that you maybe will consider vetoing this bill and bringing the legislature back to try to find a more viable solution. But with that being said, I appreciate all the hard work on the bill. We just agree to disagree from time to time, and I'm deeply concerned about the plan participants, but I'm more deeply concerned about the retirees. You know, the folks that come to us every year wanting some type of COLA, some kind of increase, which I know you meant tremendous cost and it's hard to do and maybe even impossible to do. But, you know, we did a little bit for those on the lower tier, but my concerns are this is going to put a huge burden on the folks that serviced our state for so many years for so little pay, and now the benefits are even going to be less and less. So with that, Mr. President, I will close, and I appreciate the indulgence. I'm certainly a no on this bill.
Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm rising to speak in favor of the bill. And actually, very enthusiastic about what the Senate's about ready to do here just after we just passed this tax plan as well. You know, coming into this session, we had hospitals that were saying they were going to quit taking PEIA. And what does that mean for the employees of our state? It should have been a really, really strong bellwether that the network of medical providers that are there to serve your medical needs, from everything from a sniffle to cancer to major surgery, was at risk if we go forward with what's been happening since 2012 at least, where there's been no premium increase and no reimbursement increase in spite of the cost of medicine skyrocketing through the roof. And so what challenge was before the legislature this year, and opportunities, was one, the challenge is how do we make sure that we retain the providers in the state that will continue to accept the PEIA plan. It was reimbursing at 50% of Medicare. That is to say that in order for a PEIA patient to go to their medical provider, that medical provider was paying that patient to provide that patient care. That's not sustainable. That's what it meant. And in fact, it was at quite a loss. So the first thing this legislature did, and they came back, and I'm sure we all recall, is we passed a bill for inpatient hospital care, for that alone, just inpatient hospital care, to raise it to 110% of Medicare. That, for one, at least kept the hospital care side of things there, but it didn't address the rest of it. And what we've been seeing is that in order to keep this plan solvent without increasing premiums, little by little, until it grows into substantial, we've been putting stuff into the reserve fund to make up for the loss in PEIA. In other words, they were paying out more medical expenses than premium was bringing in. So from general revenue, we keep adding in. This year, we were adding another $100 million. Between now and 2027, it was going to require us to put nearly $1 billion in backfill to PEIA. This year, presently, as we talk right now, the plan's not an 80-20 plan, it's an 83-17 plan. And it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So here's what this fixes. Several things are happening here. One is we just voted on a tax bill, and that board went green like crazy. They went through and it did a $760 million plus tax cut to every single West Virginian. That includes our state employees. In addition to that, I think we got a pay raise bill coming up here soon we're going to be talking about as well that goes in. It's $2,300 across the board for every state employee. $2,300 across the board. The absolute most expensive PEIA plan for a family in the state cost $88 less than that. So not a single state employee, when you do a $2,300 raise and this premium piece, gets hurt. In addition to that, they got retirement that goes with the pay raise that's going to go up. That follows another 52% in the contribution from the state to the retirement plans that follows after this, in addition to other benefits that goes along with the payroll. And then we do the tax cut, and you add a tax cut on top of that for the ones that are just about the $88. Those are the $130,000 earners and up. Who do you think is getting a tax cut when you do a 21.25% tax cut on an income tax? State employees and this legislature and the people of West Virginia, knowing that their state employees are secure, should be thrilled with this. This is phenomenal. I can't thank the committees and the legislators enough who worked on this plan to get this solved for the state of West Virginia. Mr. President, I urge adoption of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Marshall.
Mr. President, I'll be brief, very brief on this, but I strongly support this bill. I'd urge those to vote yes on this bill. PEIA has been, circling the drain since I've been here. We've talked about it. I stood on the floor and talked about it last year on day 60 3 or 4 times. And what it's doing and what it's been doing is there's so much resources going to PEIA because it's not been run like an insurance plan that is taking away valuable resources from other parts of our state's budget. And that was getting exponentially larger and larger every year. This bill, yes, it raises premiums. That's okay. That's what every insurance plan does. They haven't had them raised for 12 years. And to be honest, I think the PEIA policyholders are fortunate enough to have a pay raise in conjunction with that, if they both pass and be signed into law, that allow that premium to be offset, and they don't have to necessarily feel it. But what this does is it's starting to morph PEIA into an insurance plan, and therefore it'll become more and more like an insurance plan over the years. It'll require less and less subsidies from other parts of the state's budget, and therefore we can share the money equally across the state's budget. So, and not put all of our money into PEIA and let money go away from all the other valuable parts of the budget that need it. It's a good bill, and I urge passage.
So further discussion? If you wish to close, Senior Senator from the 17th, close debate.
Dear Mr. President, I would just say in closing that at the end of the day, I think our state employees realize that PEIA financially has issues, and I just want the folks at home to know that there has been great measures taken, a lot of concern, both from the governor's office as well as the House and the Senate working on this plan to do the best we can so that nobody feels this premium increase. There's been no premium increases since 2012, and that is obviously not sustainable, and that number continues to grow. And so what this plan does is it does make PEIA sustainable to the future. It's an 80-20 plan. There are 3 buckets where this plan is paid for. There's the 20% by the employees. There's the 80% from the employer, which is the government, but it's not just the state government, it's federal government. And by freezing that in the way that it's been over the past 12 years, you have frozen out the amount of monies that we get from the federal government and from the employees and putting it on the back of the other taxpayers across the state of West Virginia, which has created a problem because, we're leaving federal money on the table that could be helping to supplement these premiums. I think this goes a long way. It makes it sustainable. We've tried to address the fact that there needs to be a strong actuarial plan so that we don't get back into situations where we get underwater on this thing again. We put in measures to make sure there's a smoothing process so that for the future that state employees don't see large premium spikes with the reserve fund. We've done it in such a way that not a single person on the state plan should see any changes in their premium. We've incorporated the pay raise along with the tax cuts into this so that it in actuality should be a financial gain in addition to getting this caught up. For all these reasons, I urge adoption.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk to prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 29 yeas, 4 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none on this question. 29 yeas, 4 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 423, increasing salary for certain state employees. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill would increase the compensation of state employees. The committee substitute provides a $2,300 across-the-board pay increase to those state employees whose salary is set in a pay schedule and state code. These include public school employees, service personnel, and employees of the state police. A pay increase for other state employees would be subject to the appropriations in the state budget. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Marion, Senior Senator from the 4th Yield.
Yield.
Senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. We have a good one we like. We have one we don't like. We just got to move on, right? So, but my question to you, sir, I appreciate the work and appreciate the pay raise, but the last pay raise that we did, I got calls from DOH workers because we say this is a $2,300 across-the-board raise for all state employees. But all state employees' pay schedules is not in code. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, so any of the special revenue stuff that state agencies could have to take care of those off of fees or the federal funds that come down. As you know, we passed the pay raises and we've done. The ones that are included in this one, in the bill that's before you right now, are the teachers, the service personnel, and the other employees in the schools and the state police. Anybody else that's underfunded under general revenue is included throughout the budget. The special revenue accounts, like where federal funding like would come through DOH, corrections and those things, those are in the state agencies, and those funds that come down through those special revenues would have to come in. We've had discussions with the executive office. They understand that in order to be able to provide that raise, that they'll have to do it through those income sources they have, just as we have with every other pay raise.
I understand that, but there will be money in those departments, for lack of a better term, to provide pay raises to those employees?
Yes, sir. The spending authority is included in the budget.
So, because I want to be clear, and I want to ask you point blank, because I'm going to get it, we're all going to get it when we go home. It always happens. I've been here a long time. Is it your understanding, and do you feel confident that every state employee will get a $2,300 across-the-board raise, whether they are a teacher or whether they drive the snowplow truck?
Okay, so I had to think of who's driving the snowplow truck when you said teacher that. So I was thinking you had a school bus, a DOH worker.
DOH worker, yeah.
So, you know, the level of their pay raise, I have a confidence that every one of them is getting a pay raise. I don't know that those agencies come back, and it's up to them whether they decide they go up to $2,300, because that is not what this law contemplates.
I know, and I don't want
to
to
be... The bill before you contemplates a $2,300 pay raise for state employees whose salary is set in the pay schedule and state code.
Yes, and I agree with that, and that's why I asked you to yield, sir. I just don't want to be disingenuous, because I just don't want everybody out there believing, because they don't a lot of people don't understand that some of this is statutory and some of it isn't. And, you know, we're going to go home and tell everybody we gave them a $2,300 pay raise, and I just want to make sure that we have it on the record that there are certain ones that we gave a $2,300 pay raise, and we hope that by providing the funding in the budget, which I believe you have done, that all the agencies, all the different departments out there will be able to give every employee the same benefit.
We have provided the spending authority in the budget. It's up to the governor for anybody that's not a general revenue. Go in there, and I would ask you to yield as well. When's the last time that we gave a pay raise that didn't happen?
Well, it was a little difficult last time on DOH.
Did it happen?
It finally happened.
It happened?
But
Did it happen?
Well, okay, let's just
You asked me. You asked me. You said,
Hey,
okay,
just
I want
calm
to
down
be
here a little
clear.
bit.
One at a time. One at a time.
I mean, I'm not really trying to put anybody on the spot. I hope you know me well enough by now. I just want to make sure that everybody believes there's money out there for everybody to get a pay raise. In your expert opinion from drafting the budget,
I see no reason why they would not.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I get a call, I'm going to tell them to call the governor, right?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Thank you for yielding. Thank you, Mr.
So
President.
further discussion, Senator from Monongalia.
Mr. President, the senator from Marion is in fact a state employee, and he will not get a $2,300 pay raise.
So further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Mr. President, I move the bill be made effective July 1, 2023. Request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective July the 1st, 2023, and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than two-thirds of those elected to the Senate having voted in affirmative, I declare the bill effective July the 1st, 2023. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 150, the budget bill, second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the constitutional rule requiring the bill to be read on 3 different days be suspended. The bill be read a third time and placed on upon its passage.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the constitutional rule requiring the bill be read on 3 different days be suspended, and the bill be read a third time and placed upon its passage. All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Have every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 32 yeas, 1 nay, 1 absent, not voting. More than 4/5 of the members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the constitutional rule suspended. The clerk will read the bill a third time.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 150, the budget bill, third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill appropriates all public monies from the state treasury for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023. The bill provides for $4,399,673,296 in appropriations from the General Revenue Fund, including claims against the state. $1,672,823,538 in appropriated spending authority in the State Road Fund, including claims against the state. $2,097,484,388 in appropriated spending authority for special revenue, including claims against the state. $144,077,498 in appropriations from the Lottery Fund. $334,670,790 in appropriations from the Excess Lottery Fund. $9,429,232,226 in appropriated federal spending authority. $831,899,732 in appropriated federal block grant spending authority. $1,144,878,000 in general revenue surplus appropriations. $16,750,000 in lottery surplus appropriations, $17,800,000 in excess lottery surplus appropriations, for a total appropriation of $20,089,289,468. The general revenue changes are as follows. There's 2 large decreases in general revenue. The medical services and social services were reduced by a combined total of $484,000. This is to account for the total cost in the State Senate's tax plan that passed earlier in Senate Bill 424. Now, I want to make a point that of these 2, this is budget process, as we all know, goes back and forth, and as we just sent back over a bill that actually increased that tax cut, we'll be coming back and be making adjustments on that portion of the budget. The other thing I would say on that is that for that reduction, going from the base budget and putting those medical and social services into the first and second surplus item of the back of the budget, that there is much more anticipated surplus than is required for those 2 to be funded as the money comes in, and they get funded all at once that surplus comes in August. And this is to account, or these 2 reductions, rather, as I said, are placed first in the proposed general revenue surplus section. There's a proposed $30,500,000 reduction to the school building authority. These are reallocated into the school aid formula to cover the cost of Senate Bill 274, which offered the good reading support services to students. PEIA matching was cumulatively reduced by $8.6 million. Local economic development assistance was reduced by $1 million to the judge's retirement, and the judge's retirement system was reduced by $408,000. The total reductions in the Senate's proposed budget is $524.6 million. The Senate is also proposing just over $38 million in improvements, $600,000 in improvements to increase reimbursement rates for sexual assault forensic services within the state, $500,000 for a joint effort between WVU and Marshall to help rural communities with grant writing. almost $34 million in additional money in the school aid formula to cover for the provisions of Senate Bill 274 that offers reading support services to students, $800,000 to begin the realignment process of CPS workers across the state, and money to improve the reporting system for these workers, $1 million additional funds between WVU and Marshall to help expand the Brownfield Professional Development Program, an increase to the West Virginia State University for their land grant match to help draw down the total of their additional federal dollars. Then pay raise. The Senate plan would change the governor's pay raise structure, as we discussed earlier, from an average 5% raise for all state employees to an across-the-board increase of $2,300 for all state employees. DHHR is the last notable change in the Senate's budget, is based on the recommendation of Finance Subcommittee A. Each of the state's hospitals are broken out into their own budget item. This is the first step in many that will begin to separate DHHR into 3 entities. This change to the budget is revenue neutral and simply realigns appropriations. There are other fund changes, and there are several changes in all the other funds that deal specifically with the change in the pay raise structure, but 2 in special revenue that I'll highlight. At the request of the Department of Administration, an additional $2 million in spending authority would be given to the Office of Technology to allow for the completion of the technology assessment they are currently running across the state, and a new fund for emergency medical service workers salary enhancement fund created. And this fund would allow for expenditures in accordance with the provisions of Senate Bill 737. The surplus section is as follows. The Senate would propose $1,144,878,000 in general revenue surplus appropriations. There are 26 total items in the surplus section, and these items include $484 million to backfill the reductions from medical services and social services appropriations, $21,060,000 for soil conservation projects, which is the first of a multi-layer investment that would be a total of $55 million to repair the state's aging dam infrastructure, $7 million to the Department of Tourism for brand promotion, $282 million to allow the state to draw down increased federal dollars to begin to tackle the deferred maintenance issues across the state, especially in corrections and higher education, $38 million for additional water and sewage projects, $125 million for the first payment of 2 for the state to begin work on a consolidated lab facility, $20 million for the continuation of a nurse training programs offered by our higher education institutions, $40 million for the school building authority, and almost $38 million for the Department of Commerce to complete numerous projects across the state park system, $8 million for the repair and restoration of the trams at Hawks Nest and Pipestem State Parks, and $10 million for the newly created EMS Worker Salary Enhancement Fund, and finally $50 million to WVU to match funds for the school and obtain National Cancer Institute designation. I would mention here too that just in here there's something I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss here in the script. There is also $10 million for the Posey Perry, and then $5 million for the community and schools. It's also in here in that surplus section. Mr. President, I'm happy to take any questions and urge passage of the bill, and I would like to reserve the right to close.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, do you really want to close? The question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine to ascertain the results on this question. 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage. Request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none on this question. 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to return to the third order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of Committee Substitute for House Bill 2252 relating to establishing criminal penalties for human trafficking.
Message will be received and the bill